you said make a bath, right?
Yeah.
That's what I heard.
Like
No,
BLT.
Kathryn, literally, I heard make a bath. Like, I don't know what's going on with my brain, but I heard make a bath. I did not hear the other thing, which is amazing.
No jinxes, got it.
No, I'm saying, like, I literally did not hear it. Like, I now intellectually understand, based on Patrick's reaction, what you must have said. I'm recording, by the way. But I heard make a bath.
Break a leg.
We've started, ladies and gentlemen. This is the No Pro Review Crew. I think that goes all in the thing.
You're supposed to say Candyman into the mirror how many times?
Why don't you go give it a try and let us know?
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
We'll keep rolling. I'll keep my mic hot.
Keep your mic hot. Just get a mirror by. I still want to see that. I can't wait till that movie comes out. Ladies and gentlemen, it is Wednesday night. We're about 15 minutes late, but this is the No Pro Review Crew. I'm Noah Nelson, the founder and publisher and host of No Proscenium. I guess that's how we say it around here, right? Anyway, this is the show where the team comes through, talks about some of the stuff that they've been seeing, and makes the case for what's going to be the pick of the week. That is what we do on the New Review Crew show now, as of this week. It's like our own version of Chopped. Today, those of you who are live are going to hear people popping in and out. Some people will be coming in a little bit later. Right now, we're going to start off with No Pro Kathryn, aka Kathryn Yu. We're in the Discord, so I'm using our Discord names. Kathryn Yu, our executive editor, who just got in off a show. Say hi, Kathryn.
Hello, everyone.
And Patrick McLean, who is our Chicago curator and who is doing an increasing amount of traffic for the reviews these days. That's a newspaperman term. Hey there, Patrick.
There, thanks for having me as always.
Oh, yeah. We're going to get you a proper title at some point. So here's how this is going to roll. We're going to start with Kathryn because she's just fresh off a show. She didn't even think she was going to be arriving here today. Kathryn, what did you just get in off of?
Oh my gosh. So I guess about 15 minutes ago, I finished Lovers Anonymous, which is part of Candle House Collective's Firestarter initiative, really just kind of like an incubator for new upcoming immersive creators. And so it's really interesting because I want to say I've done several Candle House shows in the past, and I think this is the first one that wasn't written by Evan. It was written by Katie Murphy, and obviously Evan was involved, and a lot of the normal Candle House regulars were involved. But yeah, is it weird to say that Candle House Collective, and just bear with me for a second. So I think this is a very unformed theory that I just thought of like last night, this morning. I feel like Candle House is kind of like the M. Night Shyamalan of immersive sometimes, because
in a good way or a bad way?
In a good way, because you know
which M Night are we talking about?
Yeah, what era is this?
You know,
gotta be really
Village.
specific.
You know, like what are we doing here? Is it old? Come on, Kathryn, you know better.
The first time that you saw something by Shyamalan and you didn't know there was going to be a twist, or when it's really well executed, you know there's going to be a twist. Maybe it's telegraphed to you and you pick up on it, or you don't. But then when that twist finally comes around, it's just like emotionally, just like ripping your heart out kind of thing. I don't know if that makes any sense.
No. I would concur with that. I think what really they do well at Candle House is making sure that twist does land, that it does have that emotional resonance to carry you through. I remember I did one with the guy calling into the radio station. I'm sorry.
Good morning. Oh my god, yes.
Yeah,
lulled into a stupor, like you're hypnotized for 40 minutes, and then the twist comes, and you're like, oh no!
Well, that was one where I actually felt it was a little telegraphed, that I knew, that character was going to be the center and things like that, but it was still nevertheless very rewarding because the performance was so engaging and the moment, everything built perfectly, thematically and production to that moment, and it executed it really well. So I totally see what you're saying, that I think that whether they, and I remember Candle House was recently featured during one of the Spring Fling, and I kind of asked, like, what comes first, story or like haunt? And there was a bunch of kind of haunt and horror creators on there, and I think they were definitely ones where they definitely start with that story and build to it. And I thought that was a very kind of interesting observation.
Right. It's not horror in the sense of chainsaw, murder, explicit monster all the time. I think it's more horror like, look what we have found about the human condition kind of horror.
Yeah, the horror within.
Yeah.
That was super grounded. So you're in the afterglow or the aftergloom. Would it be aftergloom?
Or the after chaos.
Okay.
So this 3-day experience unfolds over a series of 9 encounters. Even like a year or 18 months ago, I think the tool that they were using most in their toolbox at Candle House was the telephone. And on occasion, there'd be some texting and maybe some links. It's expanded a little bit more in terms of telephone, but also potentially video calls in addition to text message conversations. And it's 9 separate encounters, so about 60 to 90 minutes over the course of 3 consecutive days. And the premise is that you have been brought in as an unbiased American to kind of lay judgment on this case of these 2 women who are in a relationship in a society called Amit, where romance is forbidden, and it's a true meritocracy where, it's supposed to be like a society without sexism and without racism, but one of the gotchas is you can't have romantic relationships, and these 2 characters have been caught having had that clandestine relationship, and they're arguing about what's going to happen. So,
can I just say, I think this may appeal to both Patrick and myself because of our Star Wars nerddom, and romance is forbidden between Jedi, of course. So you had me at forbidden romance. Also, just a technical note: there's some rustling on your microphone, Kathryn. So I don't know if that's
Oh, it's probably me and the fact that I don't actually have my external mic plugged in.
Gotcha.
It doesn't mean something the cable.
No worries. Just wanted to make sure. But yeah, Patrick, you open your mic because I mentioned Jedi.
I was going to make more of a joke along the lines of a perfect society gone wrong. What? Who would have thought that the perfect plan was
Utopia?
Yeah. Utopia, no romances. Yeah, it's actually it's more fertile ground than you'd think in so many ways. In so many ways.
And so you're the American who's supposed to help them decide if they should choose to stay in Amit or choose exile to America. So America is the punishment.
Oh wait, that's the choice? To like stay somewhere like with a utopia where you can't have emotions, or go to America? Oh man. I guess I'm
part of America.
It's a little vague. One of the characters seems more interested than the other, and you, the participant, are supposed to be the expert, right? So they're like, what's it like? What's dating like? What's food like? Because they don't have culture in Amit, and apparently they only have 2 types of food in Amit, but they also don't have systemic racism. So one of the characters is white, and the other character is black. And so when the black character is asking, do you think I could get ahead, that my career won't suffer, that I can really rise to the level of my ambition, like, it's a really hard question to answer as an American, knowing that she's a black woman.
Oh, wow.
And if she stayed where she was, she could climb to the highest ranks of that society. And if she left because of love, who knows what might happen.
Yeah, like she could never pursue love, but she could. Oh wow. Yeah, I mean that's different from horror. Like it is horrifying in the sort of existential crisis way, as I think you were like kind of saying earlier. But I mean that's in some ways that's just like, that's moral drama. That's drama. That's deep drama.
Of course, they describe it as a rom-com on the site. I'm like, really?
Oh
a candle rom-com? Well, I guess. I guess.
Oh my Lord.
Technically,
right.
legally, there is romance to be found.
Yeah, wowzers. Okay.
So,
well, you know what?
Fascinating work. Totally fascinating.
And they know their audience, and for their audience, that might be a rom-com romp right there. Wowzers, bowsers. I'm gonna have Kathryn. Anything else before? Also, tag this one again. What the name of this one again is?
So it's Lovers Anonymous by Candle House Collective. I believe the run is basically over. The thing with Candle House is that the throughput is so small that they will often sell out entire runs within hours of making an announcement. So I think this is the last week of the show. So it's kind of tough to get a ticket if you don't already have one.
And I think the takeaway on Candle House is if you're listening to this and what you've heard sounds intriguing and you want to take a gamble, jump into their next session. You probably want to follow them directly because of those small runs. We do put that into the newsletter. We do put it on EI, but even sometimes then they have such a deep fan base that it's often disappeared before. Hey there, Noah here. Before we get into this next section, we have to do a disclaimer. Because what happened was right after we finished recording, Patrick discovered there was an email in his inbox from the producers of Shadow of the Run that it had come to their attention that a member of the 6:30 group on Saturday the 10th had tested positive for COVID. The individual was fully vaccinated. Their symptoms presented on Monday evening following the performance, and they tested positive this morning. So this was sent on the 14th of July. We want to make a couple of notes here. One, Patrick's fine at present. It's day 5 since possible exposure. He's going to get tested on Saturday. We'll keep everyone informed about his condition. I, of course, am mortified because, I don't like sending my people but here's the flip side of it. We are not angry. Neither myself nor Patrick. Patrick's the one that matters, really. We are not angry with the producers of Shadow of the Run. I had a long talk with Ben over there last night, letting him, asking him some more questions, letting him know that we were going to be like, hey, man, we got to tell everybody that's just the way it's going to be. So don't be shocked when we do. He took that totally well. Everyone's being super transparent. According to Ben, he trusts that the person who says they were vaccinated was indeed vaccinated. Patrick was probably exposed to the person in an enclosed environment for about 10 minutes, 8 to 10 minutes during the finale. And indeed, like we said, this person was vaccinated. Some other people apparently have gotten tests so far negative. Of course, exposure events being what they are, we don't expect there to be a state change until Saturday or beyond. The production followed all the CDC guidelines. They're doing it by the book. The same thing that anyone who's operating a bar or restaurant right now is doing wherever they are. They are being super transparent, which is all we can ask from everyone at the moment. And it is an incredibly frustrating and scary situation to be in. It is a big reminder that we are not done with this yet. It definitely makes me question whether or not we should have our team members out in the field covering things. Definitely a damned if we do, damned if we don't moment. I myself, I've been at, inside of Megamart. There were lots of people there. There was definitely times when I was fully aware I was rolling the dice. I went to Brassroots District, much smaller people outside. Definitely felt like I was, that the dice were a lot less loaded as I was throwing them, doing that. And I have to, Patrick will be on next week to talk about this. I'm gonna ask him, God's willing, nothing happens and we can have him on to talk about. He was saying, hey, I'd be willing to join the recording of this part today. But schedules being what they are, there's just no time for this, for that. But we will have him back on, as soon as possible. I wanted to be as transparent as possible with all of you. As you can tell, Patrick really enjoys the show. Sorry, that's a spoiler. If, not so important, the spoiler at the moment. But it would be wrong of us not to note this. There is an asterisk on this one. But again, the producers are being transparent. They're letting us know. That puts Patrick's able to put himself on alert. Obviously, we won't be dispatching Patrick to anything for at least 2 weeks, assuming that he wants to go to something again. He's really good at reviewers. I hope he does, but that's me being completely selfish. I hope this does. I don't want him to get COVID. I also really don't want him to get COVID. I do not want that at all. Even in a mild thing. Look, this Delta variant is it's no joke. All right. We gotta watch our posteriors here. So, I know that there's productions that are doing various level of masks and vaccine, check. There's a lot of cultural pressure right now. You should just go along, get along. We're feeling that too, right? Like I said, damned if we do, damned if we don't. There are things happening. We cover things. What are we going to do? So that's where we find ourselves. And there's just the matter of we all do want our lives to get on. If you want to hold a higher standard, go for it. I hope you do want to hold a higher standard. If you are a producer and you want to tell people, hey, we want to check, and it's legal in your state to check people's vax, status, go for it. I know there are states where they are making that illegal. It makes no sense whatsoever. I'm not going to get political here. You want my politics? Go on my Twitter. You'll get an earful. I try not to do that here, but yeah. So again, Patrick is fine. Presently, we are watching him carefully. He's getting tested this weekend. We'll have an update on his condition. We're in contact with the producers, hoping that they let us know if anything happens with their cast or any other members of the audience. Heck, I want to know if something happens with this member of the audience. And again, everyone was following the letter of the rules, following the CDC guidelines. And there's still an exposure event. Okay? That's what you need to know. That's what we know. We're hoping for the best. And it is a die roll every time. Every time I go out, all of us, it's still a die roll. Keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. Keep yourself safe. All right. On with the show. I'm going to pivot over to Patrick. Kevin, go ahead and join into the round as you can. We're going to go Patrick, and then we'll get you, and Blake will be joining us later. Patrick, you left your home in Chicago, and no pressure, but a couple of the creators are listening live. Just want to know.
Is that why I've broken into a cold sweat all of a sudden?
Perhaps you have.
Is your ear burning?
Yeah.
No.
Well, that might be it. Yeah, no. So I had truly the great pleasure of having an opportunity, very much in my life, the stars aligned to allow me the opportunity to drive out to Cleveland to check out DreamWalkers from Shadow of the Run, who has been a company that has done two productions at least, if I remember reading the information online. I'm sure I've gotten something wrong already, and they're like shaking their head. Sorry, Christine and Ben. But they've been working on this kind of collective universe narrative where the shows are subtly, sometimes very directly by, chapter one, chapter two connections, or they all kind of involve important and key local lore history to Cleveland. Uh, and exploring things like that. In particular, the show I saw dealt with a young woman whose name is Chloe, unearths that her family most likely has a connection and knew the Cleveland torso murderer, who, as I think you can put two and two together, what that crime was about. And it's a very kind of famous local crime in regards to that, who remains unsolved to this day. And actually, as a Chicago connection, the FBI was the FBI? I don't remember.
I think it
Elliot
was FBI at
Ness.
the time. Yeah.
Yeah, Elliot Ness was called in to be the investigator and try to make heads or tails of it. And apparently, that gets glossed over in his history that he did not close that case. You get put in one David Mamet movie, and everyone thinks you're Kevin Costner for the rest of history. But here nor there with regards to Kevin Costner. It was a really wonderful show. I had a really great time going out there. They were kind enough to let me see it twice because essentially it's about an hour-long experience, and the first 30 minutes there's two separate paths in regards to it. So Chloe, of course, she uncovers this information that she has this horrific connection to possibly to the murderer, and it just plagues her dreams and her nightmares, and she has trouble sleeping. So the audience takes on the role of these dreamwalkers, these essentially spirits who work with, memories or subconscious or maybe something of a more spiritual sense, to kind of circumnavigate both the history of what happened along with, her family's actual interactions and some very personal stuff, because conveniently, dramatically, she is also at a dramatic crossroads in her own life that mirrors her family's past as well in a very specific way. And it was really cool. You get split up and we walk around, and it was not in Cleveland, but Bedford Falls, which is suburb, a town outside of Cleveland proper, and it was a very kind of old Americana small town feel to it. There's like clearly the main road and all the buildings are lined up on it, and they've been there historically for, decades upon decades. And we're walking around, and, at parts we're outside walking on train tracks that are not currently in operation at night, and there are deer who sometimes just run across, which happens in my performance. And we progress through the world for a while, the surrounding area, and then we go into one of the buildings, which uh, I, this building, my mind is still blown about how much space was actually in it. Like there was a basement with several rooms, and then there was a second floor with several doors that like you went into a room, and there was another door, and you went into a room, and it just kept like a very maze-like experience, and it was completely done up for interactions and experiences. And what I really enjoyed about all of the interactions I had with the performers were that, first off, there were some really fantastic performers featured there, some really great local talent, but everything was very engaging in regards to exploring, both the narrative, but also definitely making a very cognate effort to reflect back on me. Like everything left me with a thought-provoking idea about who I am and my history and how I would interact.
Who you are as a as an actual person who Patrick is, or who
Oh,
you were in the story?
I could way later as an audience member, you know. So it did get a little muddy there in the second half in regards to kind of interaction. Was I still just a dream walker who was going to try to figure out what was going on and help Chloe, or was I Patrick having an interaction specifically with her dreams? I had a very cool tarot reading that was very illuminating about who I am, and then it was simply just related to what the action was going on.
Okay.
So it did oscillate a little bit in regards to that, but either way, every interaction I had was narratively rewarding or personally rewarding.
Do you feel like the focus was on the story, was Chloe firmly the protagonist, or were you the protagonist, or were you co-protagonists?
I would say I was primarily the protagonist with the audience in regards to we meet Chloe very early on, but then we work with other entities, other dreamwalkers, or interact with memories of like her grandparents or parents and so on, that people she knows, to try to suss out what really is the heart of the matter. What is she struggling with? So in many ways, it's like Chloe's like, I'm struggling with this, with learning this history along with a moment of myself, and that's conveyed. She doesn't actually spell it out and say it, which thankfully, thank God. You got to piece it together and pay attention, and then you kind of have to pay attention and pick up on the clues. Is the family really, did they really know the Cleveland torso murderer? Was it just a pure happenstance accident? What really is Chloe struggling with? Why is it really unnerved her? So you spend time interacting to learn more, so then at the end of the experience, the audience comes back together and we try to wake her up from these nightmares, from all of the terrible things that she's thinking about, to hopefully give her the opportunity to move on.
All right. Do me a favor here. Could you put this in, and maybe not too expansively, but could you put this in context of sort of where in the spectrum of other things you've seen this fits? Not in terms of like, well, how good is it compared to, but in terms of like, I'm getting hints of like, there's some high narrative agency happening in this. There's some spectacle going on. Like, which of the disciplines of immersive are really emphasized here? And is there anything that this particularly stands out as exemplary?
Yeah, so I would say that this was a very engaging on rails experience where you are allowed moments of very specific pointed agency. You can't walk around and just interrupt interaction. You wait for your cue, you pay attention to the surrounding environment, and through that interaction, you then are moved along and continue onward in regards to the finale. So in many ways, if it was me and two other people in the room, as long as one of us is engaging with the performer, the story will move on. I am not always personally needed to move the story along one or the other.
Kevin, are you're tapped in right now, right? Kevin might not be tapped in right now. I was going to ask him if this sounds to me a little like the kind of work that either the Speakeasy Society or John Braver's Delusion does, in that, the narrative has to progress. Then there's some activity required by the audience to move the narrative forward, but you're still getting a pretty focused story. Something that's, dare I say, a little cinematic.
Yes, absolutely. There were definitely, because at one point, having then going through the second time, knowing a certain piece of information about a questionable doctor, you walk into a room. The first time you walk into the room, there's tarps up, and you think the tarps are maybe there to just kind of mask, the stuff that lives in that room all the time. But then going in the second time and meeting with this very suspicious doctor it's like, oh my God, why are there tarps up all this room? I do not want to be in this room with this man.
Mm.
So I think that was another thing in regards to very cinematic quality is that I even said I actually wanted to see it a third time after I raced back to see if I could try to get a ticket. They were sold out to see it for the last performance because each time, having done it the first time and then a second time, I kept getting more out of it. I made more connections. I noticed more details. It's definitely an experience. The more you do it, the more you get out of it too.
That's always good to hear that there's layers going on in the work. This was like your first major show post-vaccine, right?
Yes, this was actually also my first in-person show since yesteryear.
Yeah.
I can't even remember now.
Before we have Kevin talk about Brassroots District here in LA, talk on that for a second. Like, how did it feel to be back in the game?
It felt really great. I think what made it really easier for this experience is that majority of the time you are outside or you are in a very small group of people. I thought Shadow of the Run did a really great job in conveying the actors are completely vaccinated. We have complimentary masks. If you want to wear a mask, please wear a mask. At one point in my first show, there was an older gentleman with a wet cough that kind of made me a little nervous, and I put my mask on and no one had a problem with it. Especially when we got to there was at the very end, the show ends in a basement, but it felt really good. And I think another credit to the performances was that everyone wanted to be there, at least to the performers and then some of the audience too. Like they definitely wanted to come out and have that interaction, to see someone live in front of them, moving a narrative forward and trying to emotionally engage with them, whether it was directly in a direct interaction or passively through a more staged moment. And it was really great. And it was definitely, just for that sense, it was worth the 12-hour ride round trip.
All right. Well, there you go. That's an endorsement.
Before we jump to me, I wanted to ask Patrick one thing, because I thought he made a really interesting point in his capsule about how this is kind of like a small market work. It's not in a normal, it's not in Chicago or LA or New York. It's in Cleveland. I thought that was a really interesting point, so I wondered if you could speak to that a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is something that I definitely do talk about with, I think Noah, we've talked about it very passively and stuff like that. But, even though I am in Chicago and it is the third largest city here in America, you sometimes both in all forms of art and all ways of life, Chicago does get the flyover treatment to a certain degree, right? That's just the way it is. The big tentpoles are in New York City and LA, and rightfully so to a certain degree. But having been here and engaging and getting involved with No Proscenium, I've discovered so many fascinating performances and engaging stories and thought-provoking artists just in my city alone, and then to go to Cleveland and take part in this experience. Shadow of the Run, I think they're doing really amazing work, and I think it's really important that in many ways, we always talk about growing the community and engaging more and expanding, and whether work is happening and we just don't know about it, who's to say? But I think it's it's really important to engage and try to call out really great regional work that's happening. I think about also my brother lives in Texas, and frankly, I'm going to plan a trip to go see him just solely so that I can go see Strange Bird, Immersive's, the man. Oh shoot, what is the name of that show?
The Man from Beyond.
The Man Beyond. Yes, I kept wanting to say the Houdini, but they're doing great work, and they're out there in Texas doing things, and there's just got to be more of us out there. And I think in regards to get more people involved and stop having immersive theater be the thing where it's like, oh, what's this interesting thing you're doing? Oh, that sounds fun. Like I have theater, storefront theater colleagues here in Chicago who still look at immersive theater as, oh, that weird kitschy thing you do. And I'm like, no, it's not some weird kitschy thing. It is a legitimate, engaging form of performance work and live entertainment. It is just not something that you stumble into or it's just for a niche audience. This is for everyone, and there are stories being told for everyone. And I think Shadow to the Run is doing all of that. They are creating engaging work for their local community to get them out and going and exploring more things. So then hopefully if those people move or travel, they're seeing other cool work and they're talking about it. And then they're getting people to then come to the next show and bringing more groups. And I think that's just so important to the growth of our industry as a whole.
On the note about Chicago, like it does not surprise me because of how strong Chicago's storefront theater, history is. You've got that, history that stretches through Steppenwolf and back and like this real strong identity. It doesn't surprise me that immersive is kind of thing is like, oh, that thing, because Chicago, at least in my day, like, that's where you went to go be an actor. If you wanted, maybe you'd be a star in New York, but if you wanted to be an actor, you went to Chicago. So, yeah, nothing wrong with that, but definitely makes the road for our world. What are you weirdos doing? Go do some Mammoth. Gotta go do some Mammoth,
Or worse in here in Chicago, just like the improv element where,
oh, absolutely,
they're talking to me, so that means I can just talk nonstop or engage nonstop. And it's like, I just need a suggestion and then you're done. Like, I wish, that would carry over.
Yeah. Oh, maybe that's actually the thing. It's like, oh, you mean I don't have to stop talking? You don't just want a word? Yeah, that's fascinating. We'll talk about that sometime. I want to keep this train moving though. And Kevin, and remember at the end, when we shut off the recorder, we're going to talk for a couple of minutes, with the recorders off in private and figure out, what shall make the show, the main show for pick of the week. So doing it chopped style this time. Kevin Gossett, LA Reviews editor, talk to us about Brassroots District.
Yeah, so Brassroots District is a new show that opened up in LA this weekend. It was actually my first in-person show back since being vaccinated, and I think probably since something in like February of last year that I actually went to. The premise for this one is that it's 1973, and you're there to see Brassroots District, which is a funk band opening for Sly and the Family Stones. They try and tie it into some real-world elements and kind of what's happening at the time. And the concert that this band, like, it's a legitimate band that I'm not sure the gentleman's name. No, you know it.
Oh, it's Ari. So what, and that's actually a good point. We should preference this one a little bit in that Ari Herstend, who has long been a backer of NoPro, and for the record, like, on Shadow of the Run, Ben and Christine are watching us right now. They too have been backers of No Proscenium for a while. The real key though is like Ari's name is said every week on the show because he's a sustaining backer of the show. And it is one of the reasons why, whereas I am doing like a podcast piece about the show this week because Ari, it's this for the reasons Kevin's about to explain. And then Monica Miklas is directing and Monica's, someone who's been working in LA for a very long time. Ari is one of the sustaining backers of NoPro. They've contributed a lot over the years, as it were. And so I knew I couldn't review. And I was like, Kevin, go do your duty. Go do the impartial duty. So here's Kevin's impartial duty.
Yeah, so it's a band that I think he formed a couple of years ago. Ari did, and it's brought into the. I think it's been around because I was looking them up, and
so that's actually a fun thing. They've been working on the project for a few years, but I do believe that the band itself is just a couple of months old.
Oh, even better then. We'll get to that in a second. So the Brassroots District is at the center of this, and it's like they're performing a concert to open for Sly and the Family Stone. So that's kind of the real centerpiece of it is this show that they play. From there, it's kind of an open environment. They let you in. It was opening night when I went, so a lot of people were dressed in 70s garb, just like decked out to the nines, which really helped like kind of create the atmosphere I think they're going for in this kind of parking lot in LA in the summer and 70s. And then from there, there's characters roaming around. You can end up backstage with the band if you talk to the right person. The band manager's there. There's some record execs kind of mulling about. So when I first walked in, I was a little worried because the start's a little slow and made me a little nervous. But then once it kind of gels and you kind of more characters start to filter in and more audience start to filter in, it starts to take shape and you kind of see what it's doing. So the band comes out to play, and then it's a funk band and they're really good. I didn't expect them to be kind of as good as they were. It was really impressive to kind of see this happen. It was just a cool concert experience too. And then they kind of take breaks in their set, and you can learn more about them, and you kind of follow them around, or you can kind of learn what the record exec is up to and what he's trying to get them to sign. There's some like groupies there. There's some other kind of actually like art and like installation stands around where you can purchase legitimate things. There's like a tarot reading. There's like you can make your own signs. You can purchase merch for the band or kind of other kind of 70s period clothing. So that's kind of the gist of the event. It's pretty simple, but I think it worked really well based on that simplicity because it let you form enough of a connection with the characters and the band that by the time you got to the end, you'd kind of been on this journey with them, and it kind of climaxes in this like big performance at the end as they pull the set in, they pull more of the audience in to kind of, they do like a Soul Train, and they do a second line because it's based off some stuff they like picked up in Louisiana. And I think that's something you think of as like a concert experience or like a club experience or something, but they twist it a little bit, and they bring it in an immersive element, and they bring that into the show, and it just made for a really like great experience. It was fun, it was kind of joyful, it was cathartic by the end. Yeah, I know you went a couple times.
Yeah, I caught the dress rehearsal, and I caught and then I had to go back because like I hadn't put the memory card in the SD reader because I was so exhausted that I forgot to do that part. And I went back to get tape on Sunday, so I caught a Sunday matinee that was admittedly very sparsely attended because it was their opening weekend. But I mean, there are things about the show that I don't want to spoil, right? Because of how much fun it is. And Kevin, I know you and I were talking about, sort of how you found that, like, what this does to your brain. So, and I've had you say this before and on tape elsewhere, but I think it was really good to have here on the Review Crew show in particular. Yeah.
So one thing is, I think of immersive theater and like concerts as like something that affects my brain in the same way. It kind of hits that same center. And I think it's the way that crowds like kind of get engaged, or they kind of bring people into like this all-encompassing experience. So I think what this show did, it combined the two of those things in a really kind of fun, interesting way. So it kind of tickled the immersive part and the concert part of my brain that fit together at the same time. And that was just, again, it was really fun. I keep coming back to that word, and I'll probably say it a few more times on this show, but it's just a fun experience. And the summer is, yeah, and I think no, and that's exactly what it wants to be, and it just nails it, and it's like, oh, okay, it was cool, it was fun. I wanted that. I needed that.
And kind of like in continuity with like Patrick's point about how there probably really hasn't been something like the kind of cinematic work that we find in Shadow of the Run, like in the Midwest, other than the previous show that team did. there hasn't really been a show like this here in LA. You made that point when we were talking the other night.
Yeah, so there's another one. Is there's kind of this one invites like a big group of people to come in to the show and kind of watch it. I'm not sure what the capacity is, but it rarely do shows that even the capacity in LA kind of keep everybody together, and this one does because you're in a parking lot. So even if people are talking to characters, you're kind of can see each other basically. And the point I kind of connected that to was that it does something similar to Immersive Gatsby, where it kind of has this central area or kind of through line that it brings people, audience members, back to and splits them off of as kind of the main point of the show. And yeah, we haven't had anything like that in LA, and I'm not sure even if there's anything kind of prominent like that in other cities throughout North America. But I guess the second part of that is it kind of makes things like Patrick was saying more accessible to people, because it felt like a show you can bring people to pretty easily. It's not, you don't need some kind of crazy buy-in on like you're joining a cult and you're gonna do this, or it's like a horror thing, which is a lot of kind of LA theme kind of does veer into horror.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just this kind of like loud, fun party concert experience that is immersive, and it brings those pieces together in a way that I think people like us can enjoy, but also people that aren't super into immersive.
There were three dudes at the Sunday matinee who who came and ate at the same cafe afterwards that I did, and I struck up a conversation, and I was just like, I was like, how'd you find out about the show? Because of course I'm always curious. And they had like seen a Facebook ad, because like they're selling tickets through Fever, so I'd seen that ad, and they were like, I was like, what'd you guys think? And they're like, well, we loved it. Like, this is great. Like, I didn't know what it was going to be, like what kind of show it was going to be. Like, I've done some stuff that says immersive, but I didn't know it was going to be like that. And I was like, oh, well, like, give some word of mouth then, because like, this stuff lives or dies by word of mouth. And he's like, oh, okay, right on. Because like, people don't know that like the Facebook ads, unless you're spending a lot of money, they don't do that great. And even then, the conversion rate's not so wonderful. So word of mouth is going to be strong. And the guy was like, I'll go get a date and take a date. and it's like I think people are going to come back and just be like, I'm going to take a date back, and that right there, it's a social thing as much as anything.
Really quick, because this is something I'm a little curious about and was not clear on just from reading about the show, both the listings and the review. How big is the audience? Like, you say party, and and with the concert and everything, I'm thinking like, not, in theory, I know it's not hundreds of people, but I'm just curious what the size and the scope of it was.
Kevin, how big was Saturday night?
I'm trying to think. It had to be, and maybe it wasn't as many as it felt like, but I'd say at least like somewhere between like 75 and 100 people. And maybe that's not actually the capacity, but it felt that size. Yeah.
The report, the dress rehearsal was a lot smaller. Sunday matinee was a lot smaller. One thing they discovered they could do between dress and the matinee is they've got a couple of like kind of pop-up tent type things, like the canopy tents. You know what I'm talking about? Mm-hmm. And they've got some couches there that they put the people under the couches so they can chill out during the thing. And based on the size of the expected audience, they set where those are accordingly. So they kind of like change the setup so that down front in the stage feels a little more intimate, or always feels like it's the right number of people, which I thought was very clever that they found that. But I think probably, Kevin, they were saying like about 100 they had on Saturday night. So Kevin's count about 75 to 100. Yeah.
I have seen something that is also a concert. Oh, sorry.
Oh, go for it.
And I want to say, like, when it does end up as an immersive show with a concert at the end, it's the only time you get to see the cast do a bow. Like, literally. Every other show, it's like, okay, I kick you out now.
Yeah, and I don't think the cast actually took a bow for this one.
They don't.
Oh,
but what was interesting, the crowd was so engaged on Saturday night that they called for an encore.
Oh, wow.
But the band didn't have one ready.
See they have a band. They have an album. It's on Bandcamp. It's $5, and apparently, if you if you listen to the bonus tracks or other goodies, you can, quote, navigate the parking lot and the people you meet. So it seems like they've hidden some like bonus content in this digital album.
There's a phone number you can call. And let me see if I can like call that phone. Yeah, here it is.
I've called the number. It's great. As someone on the East Coast, hi everyone, managed to come in. Everyone call this number. Trust me on this one.
Okay, so 323-596-1973 for anyone listening.
Yes. 323. I had it ready. Blake came in.
I thought you were gonna actually call it.
No, I wasn't going to call it. Like I pulled up the number on my Instagram. So yeah, 323-596-1973. Totally, as Blake was saying, just do it. If you haven't done it yet, do it. Do it.
I really thought you were going to patch them in.
No, that would have taken too much. Also, like there's a substantial amount of material. I'll just say. So, and I will also say, because this will drop Thursday morning. You will probably hear a few bits of what's on when you call the phone number on this week's podcast. So there you go. There's a little preview there. So Kevin, before we roll on to Blake, because we got to keep the train moving, got to keep this funky train moving. Anything else you want to call out here on Brassroots District, particularly because we're going to be going into deliberations after this?
Yeah, I think it's just like a fun, funky show with a cool band that's really accessible to like bring people to that maybe are not kind of into immersive, and I think it keeps people engaged. Like again, people called for an encore for this band as part of the show, and that's just something cool to see with like a bunch of people that maybe not fully bought into immersive to kind of be that engaged by the end of a show.
All right. Blake, you are up to bat. What do you have for us this week?
This week I saw the spectacular Dragonbutter.
You're really soft. Can get a little closer to the microphone.
So sorry about that. Can you hear me better now?
It's mostly distorting. Do you have?
Hold on 1 second. Let me try an alternate mic.
Yeah, set your settings a little bit because I don't want it to be all gobbledygook.
Can you hear me now? Any better at all?
A little bit better. We'll call this one better.
Sorry about that. I can try to speak loud and clear.
You're coming in great now, Blake.
Great.
Fantastic. Let me just close the door. I don't want to bug my roommates. Hi. Yes, I saw Brian Sanders' Dragonbutter and loved every minute of it.
All right, what is this?
So Dragonbutter is Brian Sanders' new show with his junk troupe out of Philadelphia, inspired by his time in quarantine playing video games all the time. And so it's this mixture of his typical avant-garde dance, incorporating all these odd physical elements that have been recycled or created from scrap metal, but done through this lens of this sort of wacky Portal-esque mad science experiment throughout this giant warehouse space in the Northern Liberties neighborhood of Philadelphia. And so when you arrive, show starts the minute you're on the street, as everyone is given walkie-talkies and sort of brought in by people in white coats playing the scientists of the facility that you're going to be touring, where sinister 1980s genetic experimentation used to happen. And you go from room to room with light game elements like scavenger hunts for EXP granting items, or a quick round of laser tag halfway through the show, seeing these spectacular dance pieces. And the whole thing has a very gamic structure, that you're doing something very similar to Dark Souls, where paths keep looping back in on themselves and you don't realize where you were. And honestly, the big kind of highlight of it all was just how accessible this made what was, at the end of the day, an avant-garde dance piece.
I love hearing that avant-garde dance pieces are leveraging all of the wacky gamification tricks that come in through our world. That just makes me absolutely giddy.
It was... giddy is very much the right word. You know, the whole thing has this very tongue-in-cheek, wry sense of humor about both an AI gone wrong that's kind of executing all these defenses for the lab, you know, releasing the lizard people who the lab has developed, who are all dancers in morph suits rolling around or dropping from the ceiling. But, you know, you're also getting the odd personality of the scientist who developed it. And so kind of one of the big highlights of the evening, I don't want to spoil the finale other than to say that there is actual literal combat with one of the dancers. But one big highlight of the show is right in the center. You come across the opposite of a sensory deprivation chamber, a sensory overstimulation chamber, which does a really gorgeous dance piece. The room is filled with sand, and the walls are covered in television static, and the dancers are both hanging from the ceiling and frolicking through a partially submerged catwalk, splashing the audience as they go. And it just was a way of grounding something very abstract in a very tangible, procedural way, and giving it a sense of humor that made it not seem like it was taking itself too seriously. I loved every minute of it.
You said, and I don't want to spoil anything, you said combat with one of the dancers.
Yes.
Do you mean
combat?
Okay, but between who?
Between the audience and, I'll just say, one of the creatures. There is no risk to the audience's safety. Okay. The safety protocols are great. I suppose I can give it a little bit more because a lot of the reviews have been discussing it. But if you're spoiler averse, turn off
also,
now.
Yeah, and I don't think a lot of people. I mean, I guess this is going to be running at like the Fringe out there, or going to run to other fringes, or it's not going to leave Philly, right?
This is not going to leave Philly. This is going. The July run is sold out, I believe. But there is going to be a September run at the Philly Fringe. So I am strongly encouraging everyone I know who's coming to that to get tickets.
Great. So if you're a Philly native or you're going to be in Philly at the time, plug your ears until the end of this. And in fact, this is the last one, just like switch off now. So tell us about how this combat works. Because I'm mildly concerned, not really, intrigued as to how the mechanics works.
So, the Dragonbutter of the title refers to a Dr. Moreau-esque hybrid of a human that's been infused with the DNA of both a dragonfly and a butterfly to create a horrific monstrosity to chase away intruders. Remember how I mentioned that there were EXP granting items and tasks throughout the entire adventure? At the end of the evening, the path loopbacks into the company store that you started in, and depending on how much EXP you got, you are given upgrades. I was very lucky. I got a lot of EXP and was granted a paintball gun to shoot at the dancer from the parapets. The dancer is in full armor.
Oh my God.
Other people got kind of sponges soaked in Nickelodeon gack. A few people got huge Nerf guns. And so this final dance piece of this really spectacular dancer, who I feel terrible that I'm forgetting her name, but she's both on stilts and in an aerial harness with huge wings, sort of swooping around this giant space in the warehouse, this 2-story room. Everyone just opens fire on her for the end of the show. And it's all this sort of surreal summer camp pastiche of Alien, but done with spectacular dance, original techno music, and and this really joyful sense of energy.
That sounds fantastic and definitely answers my question. So
I think we lost Craig.
The,
it was too intense.
It's okay. Let's set that aside for a second because it'll just confuse everybody listening later. Remind everybody the name of the show and where they find it.
The show is called Dragonbutter. It's going to be playing at the Philadelphia Fringe Festival. You can find links to it on...
And we lost Blake. So, if nothing else...
Directory, although don't quote me on that one.
We won't be able to quote you on it because we lost it anyway. So the good news is that your capsule review is on the review rundown this week, and that will lead anyone to the show page at Junk's website. So people will be able to get tickets for the show. We have entered into that period where we're starting to have technical difficulties. So we're going to stop what we're doing so that we can have a decent night and not fight the machines forever. And everyone who's going to be listening to this in the podcast feed won't be bothered by all that. So Kevin, Patrick, Blake, Kathryn, thank you all so much for this week.
Yeah.
You're very welcome. Thank you so much for having us. I literally moved up to Philly a day early just to see this show. So happy to share it with the world.
Fantastic. And with that, the four of you meet me in my office because we've got a pick to make.